Yo, this is Stevie. I just thought I'd slide in here before the episode kicks on to tell you about the brand new and improved website, thegiglifepodcast.com. It's all there. You can follow and subscribe. All the episodes are there for you to stream or share. You can rate and review the show. You can get in touch with me via the contact page with any feedback or guest suggestions. Or you can also show your support and give back to the show. thegiglifepodcast.com. See you there. Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. My guest today is Queensland guitarist, producer and composer Joel Hunt. About a month ago, I hadn't heard of Joel, but he sent me some links. I hit play and straight away I thought, where's this guy been hiding? His new album, AudioVisual, is a stunning mix of funk, rock, ambient and electronic sounds featuring some serious heavyweights. Members of Snarky Puppy, Tycho, Corey Wong's band, and even Aaron Sterling and Sean Hurley from John Mayer's crew. There's one thing I really love about doing this podcast is discovering new music through the guests that I talk to, and Joel's music is special. I hope you dig this chat. Go check out his music. This is episode 162. Joel Hunt, here we go. All right, I think we're rolling. Joel Hunt, welcome to the Gig Life Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Cool, man. So you contacted me, and up to that point, I hadn't heard who Joel Hunt was, and you sent me a bunch of links, and I went to your music, and I went, "Fuck, this is awesome! Where have you been? What don't I know about you? You're like a sleeping giant, you know." So, man, yeah, great that we're sitting down and having a chat. We're going to talk about your new album that you've just released called AudioVisual. It's awesome. There'll be links for it in the show notes of the podcast and like in your app, people that are listening, and you know we'll talk about it as we go on. But yeah, man, good to be here with you.
Yeah, you too.
So you're in Queensland.
I am. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what part of Queensland are you?
Toowoomba.
Okay, right. Have you always been from Toowoomba?
I grew up in Roma, so about 4 hours. It's a small town, 4 hours from Toowoomba.
Yep.
But yeah, when I was in primary school, we moved, and I've been here for 20 odd years now.
Okay, so I want to get into where music came from, and so what I usually do is ask if it's sort of music in the family, and if there's not, then yeah, where did the music sort of come into it for you?
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother was a piano teacher and a great piano player, so I think that's probably where it came from. My uncle, related through marriage, is also a really great guitar player, and so he certainly influenced me as well. So they're probably the major two. Probably the major two family members that I've probably, gained musical wisdom from.
So who were some of the first guitar players that you laid your eyes on or laid your ears on that made you go, "Oh, I want to do this"?
My dad has a really good taste in music, I think, and that rubbed off on me pretty early, like very early. I can probably remember listening to music earlier than probably anything else as a kid. So Tommy Emmanuel, definitely very different style to me, but certainly an influence. And I really love especially his early 90s electric guitar albums. Brendan Wormsley, who's an artist that I actually play with now, but phenomenal acoustic guitarist, and he was certainly an influence early on for me. And then later years, my biggest influence, I would say, is Lincoln Brewster, and I was incredibly lucky and blessed to work with him on my first album.
So Lincoln Brewster, I haven't heard of Lincoln Brewster. So is he like a solo guitar player, or is he from a band? Or
so he's got a really interesting story. He was sort of a nobody that got picked up as in his early 20s by Steve Perry when Steve Perry left Journey.
Right.
And took him on under his wing, and he became Steve's guitarist. I think 93, 94 were the years that he was playing with him. And then now he's sort of he does some instrumental guitar stuff, but he's also a worship guy in America as well. So he's kind of this blend of worship meets guitar, and I really dig it. Yeah.
Once you decided you wanted to play guitar, was it straight into trying to learn how to play it yourself, or did you start getting formal lessons straight away?
It was sort of a bit of both. So I did a year of acoustic guitar early on and didn't really love it. And sort of, music wasn't really my thing. It was definitely my thing when I was like very early years. There's probably 10 years in there where I wasn't really interested in it. And then I saw my uncle playing some electric guitar music and went, hey, that's pretty cool. And so I started messing around with my acoustic guitar that I'd still had from early days. And Dad was like, hey, well, if you want to get lessons again, we can find a different teacher. And I said, sure, but only if it's an electric guitar. And so I had some formal lessons for basically all of high school. So what was that? Like, probably 6 or 7 years, I'm guessing, roughly. And then I went to study music at university after that.
What type of guitar sort of caught your eye straight away? Were you a Strat man? Were you a Les Paul guy? Were you a Tele guy? Were you an SG guy? Some guys will pick up an instrument because it looks a certain way. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I played. I think, like everyone, you get the beginner kit on guitar, and in Australia we have a brand called Ashton.
Yep.
So I had like an Ashton, like a blue Ashton Strat, basically. So yeah, I had one of those for a few years, and then I was saving up for a guitar, and I was telling my uncle what I was looking at, because there was some Ibanez, like, as a 14-year-old kid, you're like, oh, that's a shiny guitar, an Ibanez with these sparkles in it, and and the pointy, horn. Not horns, because I'm not a metal player, but like it was kind of like a sharper looking Strat maybe.
Yep.
And so that was what caught my eye. And my uncle said to me, "Hey, no, I think you should get a Strat." And I went, "No, everyone plays a Strat. Why do you want one of those? Why would I want one of those?" And so he said, "Well, I'll come with you, and just promise me you'll try one, and then then you can decide after that." And so, went to the music store, tried a bunch of Ibanez guitars, then tried the Strat and went, yeah, okay, you're right. And I bought the Strat, that's on the day, and I have been a Strat man ever since. Awesome. So it wasn't the shape, but it was just the tone. It was
the tone, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. And then later on, it was not long after that I became a big Lincoln Brewster fan.
Okay.
And found out that he played a Strat, and I basically modeled my setup on his early stuff. And I've been a Strat player ever since. I've got a Les Paul, I've got, Tellies, that sort of thing too, but the Strat is home for me.
Yeah, cool. Very good. So let's talk about your first band. So was it a local school band? Was it a bunch of mates getting together and going out in the garage and having a jam type sort of thing?
Yeah, I've played a little bit in some school bands. I mean, I've been involved in worship bands with church and stuff for years. So probably since I was 13, so it's for that like 15 years or something that I've been doing that. So that's probably like early roots of playing where I started. And then certainly, bands at school, just like concert bands and jazz bands and that sort of thing. And then probably amongst that, I was writing my own things, jammed with mates, that sort of thing. It wasn't till after I'd finished school that I was like officially in a pub band or a wedding functions band type thing. So
just the worship band, church band stuff just piques my interest a little bit. It makes me think about that whole American gospel sort of style. Particularly, I mean, I know a lot about that, particularly through drums, and because it's almost a genre in itself. The gospel chops type sort of way of playing. And so can you tell me, from your time in church bands, worship bands, that kind of stuff, is there a style of music that's particular to sort of Australian worship or the type of worship bands that you've come from? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Hillsong's definitely the big influence. I mean, they're probably the big name in Christian songwriting in Australia,
right?
And certainly a lot of churches in Australia play their music. So Nigel Hendroff, who's their guitarist, I mean, he's definitely influenced by The Edge from U2, and that sort of ambient dotted eighth delay reverbs, so that's definitely influenced my playing because I was required to do that every Sunday and still do that most Sundays now.
Right.
Yeah, so that's probably the big one. Yeah, and then Lincoln Brewster would be the other one, but he's obviously American and not Australian. So yeah.
So when did music production start to come into your world? Because we'll talk more about the albums. You've done most of the production on those, and you've dug real deep into it. So I'm just curious as to what was the first sort of digital audio workstation you got into, and what was it that drew you to sort of doing your own sort of recordings?
I mean, I was writing little bits and pieces on the guitar since I was probably 13 or 14, and I liked the idea of capturing them and recording them as they sounded, and not just kind of recording it on a phone and having a crappy version of it. So I think that was where it started. That was just I think Audacity was probably the very first thing I had, because my parents had a Windows computer and didn't have anything else. So a free program like that was like the very, very beginning of it. And then as my parents saw that I was getting more interested in this, they helped me pay for a Mac, and I had GarageBand for a while. When I was at uni, I learnt Pro Tools, and then I made the switch a few years back because I was doing more MIDI work, and it was probably around that time too that I really started getting into the electronic stuff. I started finding a love for that. When I started going, probably just like end of high school, I think it was. I came across an artist called Our City. Everyone knows him for Fireflies. That's the big hit that he had. But what a lot of people don't know is that he does a lot of other projects. Some acoustic, some instrumental, some synth pop. He kind of does everything to the highest level, and I was super inspired by his stuff. So I bought some synth programs and some drum machine type programs and started using that in Pro Tools. But then I found that Logic was probably the better one to use for that sort of production side of things.
Totally, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's when I made that switch, and I've been on Pro Tools I've been on Logic. Been on Logic ever since.
Yep. Yeah, cool. So do you mind if I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 20. I know I look like I'm a lot younger, but I'm 28.
28. Okay, cool. No, yeah. That's cool. So I can just put everything into perspective,
Sure.
Yeah, because I'm a fair bit older than you are. So, your first album, which you released in 2023, so that's Space and Time. So before, I'm not sure if you released, because I know with this latest album, AudioVisual, you released a bunch of singles. And then release the album. Today is the 1st of September, so you released that on Friday, 29th.
Correct. That's right.
The whole album. So with the first album, did you go into that thinking, well, I'm gonna write a bunch of songs for an album, or was it more so you getting into that sort of production headspace and coming up with a song, and then coming up with another one, then having another one, and then putting them together and releasing it as a sort of a body of music?
Yeah, for this new one, AudioVisual, it was probably a little bit more created as I went. For the first one, it was a lot of the pieces had been demos for quite some time. So yeah, the approach was slightly different for this one, but I had always kept in the back of my mind, this is going to be an album, this needs to make sense. I love listening to music that, where you put an album on from start to finish and listen to it that way. I'm not as big a fan of going and listening to singles, even though that's sort of the way that I put it out, and that's the way that the world goes at the moment. I'd much rather listen to an album from start to finish. Yep.
Well, I mean, you sort of, I listened to that the little promo video that you did for this album, and you actually saying that I hope you do listen to it from start to finish, so it all makes sense. And you're 100% right. and that's how they used to do it, and and it's good to see that you're doing it that way, and it certainly works. It certainly sort of starts and builds, and then has a nice cruisy section in the middle, and then and it changes direction a fair bit too. You're crossing a whole bunch of genres, but it all works. It all fits.
Thanks. No, I appreciate it. That's the best feedback I could get, honestly.
Awesome, man.
That's what I was aiming for. So that's great to hear that.
Yeah, no, good stuff. All right, well, let's talk about the new album, right? So what I thought we might do then is we'll go through little bits of the songs, and then
Sure.
you tell me, the inspiration if you can, and I know you've got a bunch of heavyweights playing on this album. So if you could tell me. I couldn't work out who's playing on what. Besides how you've got some of them, labelled like that. Ethan, how do you say Ethan's last name?
Ethan Belfield. Yeah.
Oh mate, what a beautiful song that is. Anyway, we'll get to that one. So
Yeah.
so song number 1, AudioVisual featuring Night Moves. So sort of synth heavy. All right. So where did this one come from, man?
This is very influenced by a band called Tycho. It's sort of one guy, but they're also a band. Like when they tour, they're a band, and he takes these guys, into the studio and records their things. But then he's sort of the producer. So Scott Hansen, who's known as Tycho. And I was super blessed to work with. I just found him on Instagram and sent him a message, but I found Rory O'Connor, who is Tycho's drummer, and he has a side project called Night Moves. So I sent him a message and said, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've done, sent him a bit of my previous stuff, and would you be willing to play drums on it? And he was super gracious and said yes, and he was awesome to meet and work with, and man, I was so happy with how the drums turned out on this track. They sound so great.
Yeah, they do.
That's also because my mix engineer that did this album is so great too. So John Goodmanson, who he actually did one of my favorite Owl City albums. He's the mix engineer for Ocean Eyes, and so I love that album and love the sound of that album. So to get to work with him too, he just made the drums on all of these tracks sound incredible.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so number 2 is called Got It. This is cool, man. That would have to be my favourite on the album.
Yeah, no, it's super funky.
Yeah,
it turned out great.
It is, and it's got so many different elements of music that I really, really like. The horn stuff reminds me of Tower of Power.
Right, yep.
Any sort of funk guitar. So who you got playing on that track?
Yeah, so my first album was purely possible through a guitarist named Mark Lettieri. And so he's the guitarist for Snarky Puppy, the Fearless Flyers. He has his own solo career too. And so I reached out to him, and that was like the beginning of my first album. So it was awesome to bring these guys back and have them play on the second album. And so, yeah, Mark Lettieri, Justin Stanton. Justin co-produced a lot of the stuff with me on the first album as well. And so, yeah, it was great to bring them back onto this track. And Justin, when I hadn't met them in person. We'd finished the first album, and then I met these guys when they were on an Australian run of their tour. And I've seen them a couple of times in Australia since then, which has been awesome. But yeah, so I sent it to Mark, said, hey, this is kind of the gist of what I'm working on. He wrote the bridge section of this track, and then I loved the idea when I saw Justin play live with Snarky of going, why did I not get him to play horns on my first album? Because, man, he can play a trumpet well. And I know he's an incredible arranger, so I wanted to have that side of that playing that he did on this track. So, yeah, I kind of like composed some of the melodies in the chorus there on the guitar and then sent it off to him, and he just kind of made it even better from there. But I was originally not going to keep the guitar playing the lead stuff. I thought it was all going to be horns. It was Mark's choice to go, hey, we should try keeping both. I think it's going to sound great with both. And it was totally the right call. The mix of lead guitar with the funk guitar with the horns, it sounds great. Yeah,
it does. Certainly does. Who's playing drums on that?
So that is the drummer from Corey Wong's band, Petar Yonich. Amazing drummer.
Yep.
Super tight.
There's a really cool drum fill in it. I wish I should have made a note of exactly where it was so I can go to it, but it's sort of you know the one, eh? You know the fill.
I think that's coming out of the second chorus into the bridge. I think is what you're talking about there. Yeah.
Okay, let's find it.
Right, yeah. I was thinking a different section.
Oh, yeah, right.
That is a great film.
That's awesome. Very cool. Okay, so the next one is Lighthouse. Now, you talked about in your little promo video that in your first album you didn't have any acoustic guitar in it.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. So this is where you've sort of brought it in, right?
Yes. Yep.
Nice. All right. So tell us about this one and who you got playing on it.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, this was it's the first track in sequence that has acoustic guitar on it, and this one is heavily influenced by Adam Young of Our City. So much so that I reached out and tried. I wanted to get some strings on this, like he does on Ocean Eyes album, and I reached out to the guy that played it, and he was quite a lot of money and wasn't super available, but his son, who works for him, plays everything on a cello, but he also has the ability to play it on a higher pitched cello. So it sounds like a quartet or bigger, but it's one guy with a couple of different styles of cellos. And it gives this really rich sound. There is some samples in there too, some string samples to thicken it up or to punch through the mix a little bit at times, but to have a real strings player on it was really special, and to have that link to Al City plus John who mixed it, for me personally that was a really cool moment. And it's a very different kind of sounding, kind of cinematic in some ways and atmospheric, but also it drives pretty hard towards the end. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's kind of a sum total of like a lot of what Adam Young does and sort of through my lens and through my eyes. Yeah. Right.
So you just sort of mentioned the cinematic thing. I was going through your Instagram and I saw an old post where you entered like a was it a contest?
Oh yeah. That was a long time ago.
You put a score to some sort of movie sort of stuff. Now, when I read that, my head started playing back through the album, and you could really put some of the stuff on some movies, into some movies, and do you have, is part of the plan one day to get the stuff into movies, get some publishing and that kind of stuff?
I would love that. That would be amazing if it ever did happen. And I'm sure we'll get to it, but the last track on this album was literally written with a mate of mine who is a film composer. So I love that stuff. Again, it was a slow journey. It wasn't something I was always like, when I was a teenager, if it didn't have guitar in it, it didn't count as music in my books. So the journey across to synth music and orchestral music, and it was a slow one, and my tastes have matured a lot since that. But I really have come to appreciate film music and just how amazing film composers are as musicians and how versatile they are.
Yeah, very good. Okay, this next song, The Dark, and this one's featuring Ethan Belfield, and this is your first song off this album that has some vocal to it.
Yes.
Beautiful song.
Blind in the dark, struggling to walk, lost and ashamed, I called your name with pain in my heart and no one to blame. My soul is tired, I'm stuck in a rage. Help me, my time is running out. I'm trapped in a maze, my mind's in a craze. My spirit is so filled with doubt. I miss the love that you promised was mine. Meaning's been so hard to find.
That vocal really builds to that sort of that ooh. The phrasing starts to change a little bit as the song goes on, as it builds, and it's beautiful, man. It's really. I'm not going to play that here, so people are going to have to go back and listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check it out.
That's the idea. Okay. So tell us about this one and who's playing on it.
Yeah, so I mean, I was really blessed to work with some just amazing musicians on this album, and these guys were so Aaron Sterling, Sean Hurley from John Mayer's band, and my instructions to them, of course I played some demo bass and programmed some drums and that sort of thing, but I sort of just said to them, hey, do your thing, because it's very John Mayer kind of
it is, yeah,
inspired.
Yep.
Yeah. And then my buddy Ethan Belfield, who I play in some bands with around town. We have played together a lot. We used to play. We were attending the same church for quite a long time, and we're playing in bands there together. We do some country stuff under his name, and then we also play for a band, a weddings function kind of rock centric band called Kingston Crumb. Quick side note, we actually got to go and play for Hamish and Andy's conference that they did at the Gold Coast under that name at the end of last year, because it had to do with the inside joke of Arnott's biscuits, and so that's what the band is named after. So that was a lot of fun too. But around that time, Ethan and I were working on this song. And this is the first time Ethan had spent time in a studio, but I thought he would really have the voice for this track. And since then he's been working on some songwriting, and I'm going to be doing some producing for him moving forward of some of his music too, which I'm really looking forward to. But he's got a great voice, and I think the lyrics in this song are super honest too. It's all about having doubts and struggling with life and faith and that sort of thing. And he was super honest with the lyrics, and I think it really is to the benefit of the song, of him going, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I'm struggling with some stuff. We both lost a friend a couple years back now, and he was still dealing with a lot of that too, and I think that's also reflects in the lyrics of this song.
Yeah, well, one of my questions was going to be, do you write all the lyrics to these songs that have vocals? But obviously, yeah.
I helped with the melodic direction with this one, but Ethan wrote the vocals. The lyrics, to this one. Yeah, very much so. And yeah, I didn't really want to get in the road of that because he did such a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
we also had my mate Brendan Walmsley, who I mentioned earlier in the podcast, who's an amazing country songwriter. He's won a bunch of golden guitars over the years, an incredible songwriter. So to have him kind of come in and help with some of the direction with this track too was really nice. Very
good. So Ethan's got a very unique vibrato, very fast sort of constant vibrato, which is like I said, very unique and it's a heavy tone, man. He's got a hell of a voice, and like I said, the phrasing starts to change a little bit as that song starts to build, and it's quite a stunning song.
Thanks, mate.
Cool. So when you contact Aaron Sterling and Sean Hurley, how does because I'm big fans of both of those guys.
Yeah, amazing players. Yep.
So is this something that they would have done or discussed together? How did the logistics of that work? Did you send the track to Aaron and say, "I want you to play drums on this," and then you send the track to Sean to play bass on this? And do they both know that each other are playing?
Yeah, so this was the second track. In fact, I forgot to mention it, but they played on Lighthouse, the track before as well.
Okay.
So that was the first track that I worked with them on. And so, yeah, I had told Aaron when we did Lighthouse, when we did this track as well, hey, I'm going to have Sean play bass on this because I knew they'd played together so much. So I wanted him to have the awareness of going, okay, the bass player that's going to be laying, the groove down with me is someone I spent a lot of time with. So I was pretty upfront about that. How did I get into contact with them? Yeah, I just kind of reached out through online to them and said, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I know a bunch of people that have worked with a bunch of people that I know you have worked with, and so that was kind of my in to getting to meet those guys. And again, I mean, they've got just the most incredible rap sheet. They totally could have been like, nah, not interested, but they were super gracious and were willing to play and just killed it, absolutely killed it, as you'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, but that's credit to your music. Like, I know, they'd be in situations where they would get so much stuff sent to them, people asking to, them to play on it, and they've got to be selective. And yeah, they would have heard your stuff and go, man, this is fucking good. would love
Thanks,
to.
Mate. Yeah, I guess that's probably what happened. But yeah, like they were still gracious. Like they could have looked at my Spotify statistics and gone, no, you're not there. But again, I guess, but yeah, maybe they were just focusing on the music, which I really appreciate.
Excellent. So so the next one is Back to You, and that's featuring Nathan Plumridge.
Lost out on a winding road, thought I knew best, nowhere else to go, but empty are the streets, void of any sign of life. Now I'm pleading for a call, a signal from your satellite, 'cause it leads me back to you. Every guiding light leads me back to you. Every second try, it leads me back to you. The long way I seem to go.
This one.
Yeah. So I was writing this song, and it was originally going to be an instrumental track. I hadn't, envisioned this to be a lyric-based track to begin with, but sort of as I started writing it, and I went, I think this, is kind of going that direction. So I lent into it and sort of wanted to see where it would take me, and Yeah, a buddy of mine, Nathan, he used to play in a band called Compliments of Gus, and they used to tour around Australia playing all the Christian music festivals, and I got to know him through Easterfest, which was a big festival that they used to have in Toowoomba years ago, and we got connected through that, and has sort of been buddies ever since. So as I was working on this track, I was like, I think Nathan's got the voice to do this track. I think it'll be up his alley in terms of what he does as an artist these days for his solo music. So I reached out to him and was like, hey man, what do you think of this track? I've got this kind of melodic hook line and this lyric of it leads me back to you. What do you make of it? Would you be interested in doing it? And he was pretty quick to send back the first draft and went from there. So yeah, it was really fun to work with him and do another vocal track.
Very good. And what are some other players on that particular song?
Sure, yeah. So Norm Stockton, bass player for Lincoln Brewster, we wrote a bunch of stuff and he played on a bunch of tracks on my first album. And so he was my go-to bassist for this track. I thought it would be right up his alley. Jason Thomas from Snarky Puppy, great drummer, and he played a fair bit on my first album too, so I reached out to him again to play drums on this one. And a buddy of mine, Mark Schultes, who was actually my university lecturer, who's now a great buddy of mine, and he will always be a mentor to me in the music industry. He has done so much and is such a phenomenal player and such a lovely guy. And he played a bunch of keys and organs on this one, and then the synth and guitars were all me.
Cool. Okay, next track is Synthesis featuring Jay Laser. Some experimenting into synthesis there. Sorry, I turned it down before not intentionally, before the sort of the vocal kicks in, but there's some vocal in there. Tell us about this one. Yeah,
so I mentioned earlier that, and I was just reflecting as we were listening, I realized this is the first song that I ever wrote when I bought these two plugins called Omnisphere and Battery. Which were the first plugins that I bought when I was getting into Owl City and found out, hey, these are a couple of the big plugins that he uses. I saved up and bought those, and this was the first track that I'd ever made with some of that. That made the demo, and then that's what I sent to. So Jordan from a band named M83, Midnight City was probably their biggest hit that they had. They've done a bunch of movies and things too over the years. So Jordan was in that band through their prime. He's now a producer these days, has his own thing as Jay Laser. And so again, was just a huge fan and found him online and reached out to him and again, super gracious to work with me. And so I sent him this demo and said, hey, this is quite an old one, but I'd love to see what you do with this because I think it'd be right up your alley. And he kind of took it and produced it more. And we, had the idea of putting some acoustic guitar underneath the mix there. None of the acoustics in this album are actually in standard tuning. They're all in this tuning that Adam Young invented. I drop it down a half step lower than he does because otherwise I ended up snapping too many strings. So, so I drop it down a half step and then just use the capo if I need to get higher. But so that track was literally just him and I, and we were just kind of co-producing it together. He wrote a lot of the lyrics on this, but kind of took my melodic inspiration and kind of ran with it. And a lot of the lyrics were based on a conversation that we were having when we met for the first time about writing music late at night and what that's like. And that essentially became the lyrics to this song.
Very cool. Next one's Dreaming, and that's also featuring Jay Laser. This is fun, this one.
Lots of production tricks, yeah.
All right, tell us about that.
Yeah, so that one was actually 2 demos that I had that I sent to Jordan and went, hey, I've got these 2 ideas. They're in the same key. I think the vibe might work to bring them together. But I'm not loving how I have started to kind of get these ideas together. I think it would be great if you could have a stab and see what you come up with. And he killed it, man. He did, like, when he sent me the first draft, I was like, man, we're almost there. Like, it's that good. And then, yeah, we added some extra guitars and layers and things to it as well. But so a lot of the production techniques with the synths was from one, and that was kind of the chorus that I had as one demo. And then the other demo was sort of the verses, and he just made them seamlessly work together. And then we worked on the guitars. All the guitars on this record are all digital plugins, or I have a pedal board called the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. And so I've been using digital gear forever, and it's just getting better and better and better. And I think also the ability to be able to record, at night and not annoy, my family or neighbors or anything like that. And then also reamping. It was so quick to do all that. So, we tracked some guitars. I played around with it. He had added some guitar layers too, and then I did a bit of a solo at the end. And then I said, hey, it'd be cool to have some vocals on this. And then like a day later, or a day or 2 later, he sent me basically the final vocals and went, hey, what do you think of this? And I was like, I had nothing to do with the vocals or the melodic content with the lead vocals on this, but that was for the better because he nailed it. It felt great.
Sure did. Yep, and the phrasing's all over the place. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. Jordan is a phenomenal producer, and amazing. He mixed these tracks too. So these 2 tracks were not mixed by John. I should also mention Back to You was not mixed by John. That was mixed by Nick Hard, who did my first album. But when we were working with these tracks with Jordan, he was like, oh, I tend to be my own mix engineer. Happy to work with someone else, but if you like what I do, like, happy to mix it. And so I was like, man, this sounds great. As long as we get it consistent with the other tracks, it's fine. Yeah, and my mate who Tim Hackoil, who mastered the album, did a fantastic job of making sure everything, even though there's 3 different mix engineers on this album, everything kind of feels fairly consistent, which is great.
Yep, well, he did his job there.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah. So I'm just going to digress a little bit. I mean, you mentioned, how you start to add layers to songs.
Yeah.
I watched this video on YouTube the other day by Jacob Collier, and he goes the other way. Like, he will layer with everything, and then start removing stuff.
Right, interesting.
Till he, yeah, it was. I just figured, he'd just be sort of, as most of us would build a song, start with something simple. But he probably does start with something simple, but then just puts everything that he can think of into the track, and then methodically removes the stuff that he doesn't want.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't work that way, but he is a magician. So like I can understand that he's going to have a process completely different to me. But that's cool. Like, for me, it's generally, add layers until it feels right. And then, maybe add a couple more. And if I start to feel like it's getting a bit too busy, that's generally when I'll tend to stop. Maybe I'll come back and tweak things, but, I'd probably go the other way.
The other way, yeah. No, I just wasn't trying to compare. I just thought it was interesting. It just sort of reminded me of that.
Absolutely, and everyone's got their own way of working, and I think that's a good thing. I think if you can obviously be inspired and do all that, but I think in the end, whatever works for you and produces the results is the right way, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so this next track, Tides, and that's featuring Mark Lettieri, Norm Stockton, and Petar Yonic.
Yonich.
Yeah. Okay, I was close.
You're right.
All right, let's check it out. A very Shadows sound to it. Have you heard of the Shadows?
Yeah,
the Shadows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful, man.
Cheers.
All right. Yeah. What have we got there?
So, that one was kind of a bunch of extended chords and some John Mayer influence there, and some kind of jazzy fusion influence there. So hence I kind of picked the players based on that vibe. So Mark Lettieri was kind enough to actually feature. He'd played a bunch of tracks on my first album, but he was actually willing to feature as a guitarist on this, which was super nice of him. Norm Stockton is an amazing fusion player on the bass, so it was the right choice to get him. And then through Norm, I met the keyboard player for Lincoln Brewster's band named Roman V. and he is just an incredible keys player, and I've heard sort of some of the upcoming stuff that Lincoln Brewster hasn't released yet. If you go and take a look at his videos on Fender's website, he's got some teaser tracks of his upcoming instrumental album, and I was taking a look at that and listening to the tracks and that, going, man, the synths and the keys and all of that is just so good. So I asked Norm, hey, do you reckon Roman would be willing to jump in on this track? And he was, which was awesome. And he really knocked it out of the park. Unfortunately, the way Spotify works is you can only credit 3 artists. So he didn't get credited for the track, but he definitely should have. I do regret that. But because he just does such a great job. There's a piano solo in this track, which is just beautiful. And then Mark kind of takes the second verse on the guitar, and then we kind of trade solos at the end. And then Batar, who played on Got It, who's Corey Wong's drummer, he played drums on this. And up until that point, when we tracked drums, was around the time where I was like, I want to call this track Tides, because it was kind of giving me that kind of push and pull of a tide coming in and out. So up until that point, I hadn't named this track, but it was Batar's playing that influenced the name of this track.
With the brushes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so the next song is called Adrift. So we're getting rocky now.
Oh, yeah. And there's the middle section of this, which is almost like post-rock. It gets quite heavy in the middle section of this track. And, I got a shout-out to my buddy Costa, who played drums on this track. And, again, John, who mixed it. Because, man, the drums... I'm so happy with how the drums turned out on this track. They sound so punchy and full, and I really like how the drums sound on this track. So Sean Hurley played bass on this one as well. I wrote this with a buddy of mine, Tim Hackoil, who's actually my mastering engineer. But we've known each other since we were like 1 or 2 years old, and so we studied at uni together. And he went down after uni. He went down the mixing and mastering route, and I went down the kind of artist route. And so it was really cool to write this track with him and have him kind of bring some of his heavier influences into this track with me, and kind of just take it from being a rock track to veering towards the post-rock. It was what I really wanted him to bring to this track, which was really great. But yeah, man, the drums in this track are totally... I'm so stoked with how they sound. Costa did such a great job. He's the guy that recommended your podcast to me. So.
Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. Shout out to Costa.
Absolutely. So Costa, he plays for Delta Goodrum, and he's toured with a bunch of different bands. He was in Amy Meredith, which is a big band back in the Ooze. And so, yeah, he recommended your podcast. So, man, I'm really looking forward to taking a listen to some more of your episodes, because a couple of my favorite podcasts have literally just finished. I need to fill the void.
Okay, so the final track, and this is the one. This is the cinematic one you mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's called Soundtrack, and it's featuring Jess Hartov. So let's have a listen. Very David Gilmour.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much of it away. It's got a cool ending.
Yeah, this track is in movement. So
Yep.
yeah, I had this idea. Again, you're probably picking up that I'm a huge Lincoln Brewster nerd and fan, and so this one was inspired by something that he did years ago, and so I really liked this idea. What he did was he wrote this track called, or he arranged this track called Miraculum, and it was this mix of all these Christmas carols on the guitar. So it's an instrumental track, and it has all these different movements from these different ideas. And so I kind of stole the idea of that concept, but for a film concept, I guess. You can tell through the track being called Soundtrack. But and so when I was working on my first album, I worked on a track called Longing for Home with Justin Stanton, but he was going out on the road with Snarky Puppy, and he was like, man, there's a lot of tracks in this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this on the road. Can I recommend you to my buddy Jesse Hartove, who is a film composer? I didn't know who he was. He's just like, oh, my mate Jesse he'll nail this. So if you're cool with it, I'm going to let him do this part of the album because I think he'll be perfect for it, which he absolutely was. And he knocked it out of the park on this track called Longing for Home off my first album. And I reached out to him after that and was like, hey man, I don't know who you are, but you're amazing. Can you tell me a bit about yourself? You've killed it. And so he just did some little rearrangement things, but he was like, man, I'm actually a film composer. And I was like, okay, that figures because your arrangement skills are, next level. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if you've heard of a guy named Bear McCreary, but I work for him. And I was like, holy moly, like that's as legit as it gets. Like he's one of the very heavy hitters in that world, in the film composing. So Jesse does a lot of work for him, but he also is his own film composer and works with other teams and does stuff by himself. He does a bunch of TV shows and movies and video games. And yeah, check him out. He's amazing. And so I kind of brought I had this idea based off Miraculum to take it to him and be like, hey, what do you think about we kind of write this track that goes through different movements, and each movement is inspired by a different film composer? And so that's what we were that was the brief. I didn't really know, I think early on we both thought it was going to be more electric guitar, lead line focused, but it kind of didn't take that form when we started writing for it. And I actually love that. I actually think it's better off not with that, for this track anyway. And so, yeah, the first thing that you hear on this section, the first section that you hear on this track is inspired by, if you've seen the movie Tron Legacy, that kind of synth, so Daft Punk with Joe Trapanese kind of, and M83. So Jordan's band also did some work with Joe Trapanese on a movie called Oblivion. It was a Tom Cruise movie. And I love that kind of mix of band with film composer. And so that's kind of what the first section is. It's kind of inspired by those movies and those scores. The second section that we heard with the guitar, is obviously some Lincoln Brewster influence there. You mentioned David Gilmour. You're not the first person to say David Gilmour when they've heard my playing. To be honest, I don't listen to a lot of David Gilmour's playing, but I love it. Of course I know who that is and have heard plenty of his songs, but I wouldn't say he's one of my biggest influences, but I think he has influences on a lot of the players that I love listening to. So I think that's probably why. And then, not to say I don't love listening to him, but I just don't find myself listening to his stuff as much as some of the other guys. But and so that was kind of that section. It kind of becomes a Thomas Newman kind of part of the score, and then it builds up into this kind of action music, kind of Mission Impossible type type sounding track, and it's in groups of 7. And then the big one at the end where it kind of really builds and crescendos is heavily influenced by Hans Zimmer's works. Time from the Inception movie was probably the biggest influence on this track of layers that build up and build up and build up and create something epic. And it's mostly loops. So that was the last section, and then it kind of dives back down to the Thomas Newman-y kind of ending with the sparsity.
Very cool, man. Yeah. People, go listen to it. Go find it. Well, all the links are in the show notes, so you can't get away from it. But man, I think you're a super talent, and like I said earlier, I don't know why I didn't know about you earlier. And more people need to know about you. I think you're amazing, mate. Congratulations on
Thanks, man.
On this album, and like I said, I didn't have much time to listen to the first one before we chatted today, but yeah, you're on rotation in my playlist now, man. So
thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sweet as. You got any plans to do any shows? I mean, I can imagine it would be difficult to pull a band together to be able to play it all, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. And it's an interesting one. It's something I'm still figuring out. I mean, this is early stages of my career at this point, and I spend a lot of time playing guitar for other people. I teach music as well, so that's sort of, that takes up my time, and then my passion is writing music and doing this sort of stuff as well. So I guess in terms of performing it live, I had always set out to do 2 albums. I think after this point, I'll probably go back to doing singles and things, just because it's really expensive. Honestly, it's really expensive, and it's time consuming to do an album. So I'll probably I'll release singles. And again, in a couple, if 3 to 4 years time, I might have enough to have an album, and I'll always keep that in mind as I'm writing too. But, I wanted to have an hour and a half worth of material. That was always sort of the plan. And so some of this is absolutely playable live, but some of it not so much. And so that's something that I'd have to figure out. Being in Australia, instrumental music is not a huge market. Having said that, you've got bands like Snarky Puppy that come to Australia and they'll sell out shows and do really well, so it's encouraging that there is a want there. I'm certain that most people at those shows would be either people studying music or musicians. That would be like the huge percentage of who goes to their shows. But so there is the potential, and I'm certainly looking to do more of that. But yes, I mean, some of these are production, like in the computer production techniques. So some of those tracks may have to be reimagined and that sort of thing. But it's certainly on my to-do list of going, all right, now that I've spent my time writing this music, what does it look like in a live setting moving forward? I've certainly played some of these tracks live for different things, and I've got things coming up where I'll play a couple of these tracks live, but usually they're the guitar-heavy ones. So I'd love to explore what does it look like to take some of these other things into the live context that aren't necessarily electric guitar-centric.
All right, Joel, it's been great, man. I've enjoyed this, listening to you sort of break down these songs, and it'll be good for me to go back again and when I listen to them again, knowing that information. And for all you people that are listening that haven't heard the whole songs, well, yeah, you're in for a treat. So go check it out. All right, man, good to hang with you. And
thanks, Stevie. It's been a pleasure.
Sweet as. I wish you all the best with the album, man. And I'll be championing it. That's for sure.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it.
Sweet as. Take it easy, mate.
You too. See you later.
Catch you. Bye. Hey, you're still here. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Before you go, I need your help to make the podcast better. I'm running a listener survey to get your feedback, because without you listening, there's no show. If you have a couple of minutes, please head to thegiglifepodcast.com/survey. Thank you, and I'll catch you soon.